Newtown Forbes was certified as an industrial school for girls in 1869. The Congregation of the Sisters of Mercy managed the school from the date until it was closed in 1969. Over the period of 1940 to 1969, approximately 320 children passed through the school.
It's heartbreaking to think that down in the village kind of thing, a couple of yards down the road, that all these poor children were abused and neglected and adopted and sold and God knows what else. And did everybody just turn a blind eye? What went on was horrendous. I mean, to think that the girls in particular were treated like that and put into convents and made slaves of, basically. They were there to work in the laundry and to be cheap labour. And that's what, to me, what was more horrifying was that their actual families put them in when the girls were pregnant. And they kind of said, well, you can't stay here, you're going to bring shame on the family. So you'll have to go away. But I'd hate to think that if they knew what was happening in these places,
that they
would actually put their children in there, because that's what they basically were, children.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Two girls here, their mother died, and the priest said you cannot live with your father and your two uncles in the house. The women couldn't live with the men in the house. So they brought them down to Newtown. But the clergy was all over this, and the clergy would bring them down and they tried to inveigle this girl in. She comes in to me every day, this girl, tried to inveigle her in, and no. But finally, the second or third time, the inveigled her with sweets. And she went in and she was kept here, and she was 16, and her sister. But the stigmatization was unbelievable like at that time, so.
They were just put into the laundry and made to work as slaves, really, as cheap labour for the convents to make money for them and for the nuns and for the Catholic Church. So it's horrific to me that any mother or father could actually do that to their child. But as you say, it was different times, and the women had no say, really, in what went on in the house. So probably many's that the mother had broken-heartedly sent their daughters away.
They were made slaves of. They had to wash, scrub and clean, go out for a march of a Saturday or a Sunday. They were paraded up the road from the church in Newtown, in the convent, up the road in lines of 4 deep and maybe 20 long. And then brought back down and in washed and get out working again, washing the laundry for the arms and this, that and the other. Never was paid for anything. It was beaten around like nothing.
What do you think about the nuns and the priests?
Not a lot. I have no respect for them, good, bad or indifferent, because they had no respect for themselves or anybody else.
Think of the stories you're going to hear, or the stories you've been told, where kids were manipulated with bags of sweets to be brought into school, or women were and fathers were convinced that they couldn't rear their children because their wife had died or the father had died, and it was all a case of manipulation. And I suppose the one thing when I think back at it was, at the end of the day, it was greed. It was basically, we have a business here, we're providing a laundry service, and we need workers. So actually, now that I've thought about it, when you go back to the founding of the state, they couldn't afford to run an education. They couldn't afford to run a health service. So they brought in lay people and asked them to do it. And whatever they got as a commission or a fee or whatever. So obviously, what happened then, the nuns and the priests decided, sure, why don't we set up a business here and let's look at a ready market. So I think something that probably is important to be thought about is that it was a form of slave labour.
They're buried, there's some of them buried up there in that plot. You'll see their names on it, but I don't think there's any dates of birth or anything like that. But there's some of them buried up there.
And there was any cause of deaths or anything?
No. I suppose it's not, a nice thing to have happened in your area, but it was off the time. To think that those industrial schools were still open were they up until the 80s, some of them? I can't believe that.
Yeah, that is hard to believe that they were still going then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is shocking. It is a shocking world.
But look at all the leaders of the world. Who are they?
I know.
Men.
That's the problem, I think. You know, we need more women. We need more strong women to run our countries, and more women in Parliament, and
More vocal women.
yes.
You're a teacher of small children now.
Yeah.
How would you, if...
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I would never touch a child or raise my hand to a child or put them in a corner or anything like that. I mean, you talk to the child, you try to understand the child and wonder what's wrong with them and help them best you can. And if you find them they're in distress or they're being abused or something like that, you report it. You kind of stand up for the child. You be the child's voice. But there was no child's voice back then, and there was nobody to stand up for the child. Even the parents weren't heard. Because it was like, no, we're right, you're wrong. No, the children never had a voice back then, which was just a crying shame. I mean, think of all those poor children that wanted help and love, just didn't get it. Didn't even get a hug. I'm going to cry now. You're going to make me cry. Stop, I don't want to cry.
One morning, the child was not well, and she knew that there was something wrong with her. Because she was not just laying around, I took her on my lap. I hugged her and tried to comfort the child. Although I was only a child myself, I sent up for word to say that a child wasn't well, but nobody came down. She heard that the child had died when she returned from school.
People will look at the southern parts of America and go, oh my God, look at the way people of colour were treated and slave labour. But sometimes all you have to do is look at your own doorstep.
Put me by the windows, let me see outside. Look at all the places where all my family died, where all my family died, where all my family died, where all my family died.